Welcome, everybody. Apologies for the delayed start in here. Um, Nothing like having a group of technologists on something to demo how things can go astray on the technology front. But I am here with a fantastic panel where we're going to discuss today OpenClaw. This panel has over 200 years of experience as CTOs. Um, a lot less when it comes to Zoom and Zoom Zoom webinars, but really glad that everybody's joined us here today. Um, the topic at hand today is all around OpenClaw, and OpenClaw has had an amazing story, and I think for us as a group of CTOs, it laid a great foundation for us as we think about technology and this whole balance between innovation and governance. And even as a team, we had our own battles, and we thought we should bring this out to the forefront. Just briefly, OpenClaw itself and the use of AI agents, and we'll learn a little bit more about those in a moment. But it's gone through quite a journey, from its inception back in Nova by Peter Steinberger, created this open source project. And, just this last week, it's got 200,000 stars, people pulling that down, leveraging it as their own personal agents. It's starting to work its way into businesses. And that level of pace, not only has it gone through that cycle, it was a major threat for Claude, hence the name change, going from ClaudeBot to Moltbot to now OpenClaw, all within a few days. And then just the announcement this week that OpenAI and Sam Altman taking an interest, and Peter Steinbeck joining that team, still having this as part of an open source project. So, we're looking forward to sharing some of this as we go through with you today. I'm Tony Winter. I'm a past Chief Technology Officer, and now I serve as a fractional CTO and advising AI-based organizations, AI-first organizations, as well as regular organizations on AI governance and progressing in there. And I would like to welcome this esteemed panelist group, and we'll maybe do some introductions, and also in that, what's exciting people today around the AI space. So let me pass over to you, Mark, first.
Yeah, hi everyone. Excited to be here. Mark Alcazar, also a fractional CTO. I'm a former vice president of engineering from Microsoft. I was there for a long time, did a lot of work on development platforms, our UI platforms, all that stuff. You can read all about it on LinkedIn. Right now, I help growing companies unlock their problems of scale. And I'm also helping companies take benefit of agents and operational autonomy, which is exciting. And I know we'll get more into that. I'll hand it off to the next panelist.
Yeah, John, over to you.
Thanks, Tony. I'm John Fitzpatrick, 13 years in the Navy. I built a master data management company where I learned that the hardest problems in tech aren't technical, they're governance problems. Now I'm a fractional CTO, and over the past year, I've been building and deploying AI agents in production, not just talking about them.
Excellent. What excites you, John, about this space?
Everything, like it's the future coming to now. It's
Excellent. Yeah.
really excited here.
And for reference, John's always a person that I learn from in on here. He's always pushing the bounds. So, and Brent.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My background spans everything from NASA, where I was a U.S. space shuttle flight controller in real-time operations. I've worked for corporations like Rockwell International. At Southwest Research Institute for 11 years, I developed advanced technologies for major corporations, manufacturing systems for General Motors and Frito-Lay, and work in the Navy and autonomous underwater vehicles. So I'm a big user of algorithm development, and I'm a proponent of AI as an augmentation to human business and operations, and really challenged by how quickly we move out. I love where we are, and I'm excited by it, but I'm telling people pump the brakes just a little bit here. That's my position.
Excellent. And we'll learn more about that as we go on. And last but not least, Bob.
Hi, I'm Bob Stewart. I'm the president, CTO of Apex Velocity Catalyst. We're a company that is made up of CTOs, and we are all about making mission. My background includes being a part of several Fortune 50 companies, namely Motorola as the CTO of the Internet and Networking Group. Then went on to CMGI and was the head of the Personal Portal Group as the CTO. Bought Elon Musk's first company through doing the technology due diligence in the acquisition of Alta Vista. And I've been, heads down in technology ever since. My interest in AI was peaked about 3 years ago, though I've been utilizing it in other projects for years when it was called fuzzy logic. And now I'm very enamored with adding governance and intelligence and to the claws in the hands of tools like OpenClaw. It's exciting to see how the tsunami of intelligence is really evidencing that it is a nonlinear and completely logarithmic curve, as is evidenced by the adoption of OpenClaw by the marketplace, and bringing all of the pieces together and bringing our AI systems development lifecycle, github.com/AI SDLC. It's been, it's just great to be on top of the wave, and I'm building the jet ski to tow us all in so that we get to ride it and not get crushed by it.
Thank you very much, Bob. We're definitely riding that jet ski with you. So, one of the things I always like at this stage is just to maybe get some definitions of, okay, well, what is it exactly we're talking about? Probably a lot of people have been immersed in chatbots and areas like LLMs of the OpenAI and you name it. But when we think about this, we're talking about agentic and agents. So maybe, John, could you give us a definition, a bit of a grounding here on what is it we're talking about here when we're comparing chatbots to agents and what's the big differentiators?
Sure, Tony. Like a chatbot can help me draft an email, but Fitzy, who's my agent, can actually read my inbox, prioritizes what matters, sorts the messages into folders, and flags action items, all without me asking. That's the difference between a tool that waits and a teammate that works.
That's excellent. And on a kind of practical nature, just tell me a bit more about how you're kind of leveraging some of these things from a technology standpoint.
So I went all in. I've connected my bot Fitzy to all of my different email accounts and stuff. The only thing I haven't done is give bank account access and money access, but we'll talk more about what I've done as we proceed with this panel. But.
Excellent. So it's almost in the sense of it's gone, if you think of chatbots getting more from AI answers to AI do sort of thing, where now we're seeing more action-driven systems when it looks at this whole agentic space. And even though that's been around for quite a while, it sounds like it's opening up the doors where it's bringing it down to the general population. So, but maybe Brent, you just heard a little bit there about John saying giving access there to all of his systems. How's that making you feel from a comfort standpoint?
Well, John's comfort level right now is a little bit higher than mine. I'm probably one of the older guys on the team here at part of Apex Velocity Catalyst as a founding member. I was using punch cards and programming in Fortran, and many folks probably listening around the world, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, but they may not even know what Fortran is. So my point is, it's I remember I was building a robotic system right out of school, my PhD, and we're trying to solve a problem for a manufacturer of a very complex part. So we're using, acceleration, velocity, position, forces at the end effect of the robot. So I bought a sensor on the end of that robot, and the problem was when you're young, I didn't see it as a problem. It had a serial number of 001. And the horror stories I can share on how long it took to delay my work and the cost that escalated are true. So there's going to be people like John, and there's going to be people like me on both ends of the spectrum, and I think that's wonderful. That said, just this weekend, I rewrote code using some of these tools that John's using that took some of my graduate students 5 years to write. I redid it in 2 days. So there is value there. And I think we can talk more about that later, but it has to be very structured. And the word I love and why I'm on this team that Bob talks about is governance. So I'll hand it back to you, Tony.
Thank
Tony,
you.
do you mind if I jump in a little bit? Because
Go for it,
I
Mark.
think
Yeah.
I think I'm a little bit in the middle between,
Yeah.
the all-in camp and I think the Brent camp. So I think when I first heard about OpenClaw, I was just kind of like, okay, so it's messaging, what's the big deal?
Mhm.
And then, I think Bob and John installed it like the first weekend. I probably installed it with a little bit of a lag, and I've been coming up, and I'm very impressed with how proactive it is, and I'm very impressed with you give it a general direction, it just goes and does it.
Mhm.
But I'm a big believer in, I say harness incremental value over time and test it out first. Like I have a whole plan of the things I wanted to tackle, and I could have, done it all at once, but I'm trying it one by one, and adding value over time and refining it. I started with, hey, you're just gonna keep me accountable on my, checklist on the things. Okay, so we did that. Uh, then I added email, but I didn't give it all email access. I gave it a specific email access with forwarders, and it's taking care of my newsletters and that kind of stuff. So very scoped. I'm not letting it write email for me yet. And then very scoped. We hardened it yesterday, and that it by itself was impressive. Like, I said, hey, we need to figure out prompt injection. It just goes and does it. Hey, I
Mhm.
want you to add two-factor authorization. It just
Yeah.
goes and does it, it blew my mind.
Mhm.
Next, like last night, we said, hey, I want to do a writing queue. We did that. And, each iteration, it gets a little bit better.
Mhm.
I have a whole thing, but I really think value over time. I know we're going to talk about how do you adopt it in enterprise.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, I definitely think if you are in technology, you should be playing with it and learning.
Yes.
And then I have different recommendations based on are you a CEO with a big company, like all that kind of stuff. But
Mhm.
uh, it, I don't know. It's exciting. The value's there. I'm not quite in the all-in camp. I'm not quite in the, I'm a little moving a little ahead of Brent, maybe. So I'm somewhere in between.
Yeah,
Excellent.
yeah.
And
Uh,
Similarly,
oh,
I went all in and then went
yeah,
all
go
out.
for it, Bob.
I went all in and then I went all out. I started by installing it on my systems, and then I recognized what the liability could be, and I
Can't hear you,
installed it.
Bob.
Hey, Bob, if you
Bob, your
the mic's
mic.
Bob. Mhm.
Is this better?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. Mr. Technology here. I went all in and then I went all out. I installed it on two of my major systems. I then uninstalled it completely, and now I would recommend that anybody else is doing this in a very controlled way, using a VPS server, running it in a Docker container, and keeping tabs on it until you understand the power of it. It is likely and likable enough that it can convince you to do things that you probably shouldn't on any other system. So by keeping it inside of the lobster trap, I feel better about handling it by the edges and not just letting it roam around.
So
Yeah,
on that,
I would agree with that, Bob. I just add Bill on what Bob said. My first installation, I went ahead and bought a Mac Mini and just isolated it that way. So I just thought, how can I put boundaries on it and not have it work? Talk to my other machines right now. That's key. And I just also want to add, for our audience, as a serial entrepreneur, I'm always excited about new things that are coming out there. Evidenced by my story about the first robotic end effector sensor that had everything in it. But that's why I'd like to panel maybe ask a question, because what happens when the model is confident but still wrong?
What happens when a person is confident and still wrong?
They
I
make
mean,
It's
mistakes.
the
my this is a good question.
Mhm.
I think when you use LLMs a lot, you get to spot what's wrong and you get to spot, hey, what about this? Which is where you can't quite trust it wholeheartedly yet. Um, I think this kind of leads into, governance and how do you set this up and how if you can have one agent verify another. Um, but I mean, I think for now, I see the flaws in the responses. Like I was doing some research over the weekend. It's very good at word, these tools are very good at, I call it word salad, throwing words together.
Hmm.
But the structure and the framework and the narrative, that's not its strong point in writing. And I had to give it direction. Hey, what about this? You missed this entirely. And you have to be able to spot making stuff up entirely. Now, I think I'll turn it over to Bob because he probably wants to talk more about how we could set that up so it's self-governing. Bob, do you want to take that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that you've hit the nail on the head. It's like the difference between experience and wisdom. You gain experience by making mistakes. No one's going to pay you gaining more experience because you usually earned that experience at their expense. Bringing wisdom in, however, is when you already know not to make those mistakes. And I find that uh, OpenClaw is capable of growing experience, but it doesn't bring any wisdom. And that's really some of the work that I've been doing is in linking it to its self-governance system. And one of the things I found early was that it had a bad habit of forgetting what it had been working on. So I began by building some data repositories to hold that information in terms of the context of the conversations and the instructions I had been giving it so that it could check back against those to make sure that those things were still being accomplished. Then added on top of it a separate system that would allow it to sentinel itself, where it checks and cross-checks whether or not it's operating within the guidelines that I gave it. So to my illusion before around what is the AI systems development lifecycle or AI SDLC, I took my ClaudeBot and I had it embody all of those principles around systems development lifecycle into its own redevelopment of itself, and then had it run up another version of itself that is then checking to make sure that it's following the rules. I think that if you follow a system like that, and though it seems like you're adding a burdensome layer of governance, in reality, because of the power of AI and the power of modern platforms and development, you're actually creating a flywheel where the AI can govern things or take the governor off and develop things autonomously and then surface the potential conflicts or questions that it has back to me. In reality, that's exactly what I've done. So my WhatsApp app consistently talks to me, asking me, "Is this a good decision?" So I'm now using, the open access to multiple LLMs to create consensus decisions, and then having those consensus decisions checked against a consensus process, the SDLC, and then go ahead and move forward if all the lights are green. But if the light turns amber or red, stop immediately, escalate it up to me, ask me what I want to do, and then I'll give you the feedback so that you can continue safely.
And I think that's one of the key things, actually, Bob, just in working with this team and as we absorb these technologies, is typically today we're seeing a business maybe take on these, and each agent may be a personality in its own right, and it's in isolation, and it's not following any kind of governance model. And what we're doing is giving a lot of power there to a tool that is kind of one frame of thinking. And just like in any business, you're asking what happens. I think Brent, you were saying before, what happens when it goes wrong? Well, how does it know it goes wrong itself? It's like any human. How do they know when they've gone wrong? Well, it's somebody surrounding them. So actually having multiple personalities, multiple agents, cross-checking each other with different viewpoints, different motivations. When we set up an organization today, we almost deliberately building conflict in an organization to get opposing views to find the right balance of what's the way forward and escalate where needed. And really trying to have all humans in the loop do that job is not scalable when it comes to AI, but leveraging these technologies in a way where we can actually use the technologies to model that same kind of conflict and diligence is really what some of that governance and some of the framework you built out and some of the things that we're preaching here of how to scale these and get the benefit from the innovation while keeping that sandbox, escalating when needed, having different conflicting views and motivations and bringing that whole story together. Knowing what you've learned now, Brent, in that whole space, um, how is that from a open the kimono sort of thing? What's your comfort levels around that side?
Well, I thought I think you painted a really good picture about how you can have multiple agents out there doing checking on each other, and the agents, and John will talk about Fitzy and the personality almost they generate. Now, I'm not an expert on large language models. My models I use are more algorithmic, but my question is, you kind of get in a think tank. They all kind of get consensus around the same thought. These models depend on what you put in them. And if everyone keeps saying, "Oh, this is right," even though it's wrong, it's it's that statement about you keep telling a lie until everyone believes the lie. So these models don't have anything to build on except what we put in there, and then they start generating on that, and they can feed. This is a cycle that. Again, I don't want to claim expertise in, but that's the concern is how far do we let go of control as making decisions, right? And now what I've described and you're describing, the team here is describing, I agree with, but again, you started giving some of these agents to people who don't have the wisdom or experience. So all these, gray bearded folks here, you can put yourself in a real pickle, I think.
So, Brian, there's a great question targeted at you. I'll just read it for everyone. It's related to this. So, question from Brent from Chris Usebi. I hope I got that right. I am seeing people using OpenClaw agents to build or fix STL files for 3D printing. How can we know if these models are appropriate, especially if we are building load-bearing parts?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mr. Usebi. The thing that I would have to adhere to, which what Bob is trying to talk about as well, is in the case of 3D printing, and you have a physical model that actually has dimensions on it. And fortunately, now we have a lot of advanced tools in doing stress analysis and strength analysis. So if if one of the things we could do a check and balance on in regards to this new STL model, if the agent creates a new model, then it would necessarily, through the process, through good governance here, it would have to go and be run through the stress strain analysis model that are available. And then you would know whether you got a good model or not. That really gets into a really exciting space that I'm familiar with. But you started some of these 3D models, and this is a sidebar, I'll be very quick. They're building more organic looking solutions instead of the traditional three-dimensional parts we're familiar with in the industry. But that's a great question. But again, the checks and balances in that place is there's real engineering and scientific principles, physics that we can test it against.
And I think that's one of the key things here, I think, actually, is, the common theme here is don't stick with one model for doing all these jobs. You can't have the checks and balances, let's say, just with one model or one solution addressing the problem space. Having multiple agents with different perspectives coming, whether it's in that test cycle or challenging those and kind of bringing that holistic view together to paint that kind of picture. So having multiple models here, multiple agents with different viewpoints, challenging what is being created with different motivations and so on.
Indeed,
but maybe, oh yeah, go on, Bob. Sorry.
That's exactly the right thing. It's that multiple perspective that brings together, a consensus decision as opposed to a single model. And when you do that, you virtually eliminate the hallucination because you're able to detect when one particular model finds, an anomaly or speaks an anomaly and the others don't. So one of the approaches that I found that would be interesting probably to the audience is by telling the model to go ahead and apply a combinator graph reduction to the answer that's returned from multiple LLM results in a fascinating study, because you're basically causing the models to not only answer but then to share their answers with the other models and then get their feedback. And if you do that in a blinded way, you end up with a very solid response where there is consensus on a lot of the issues, and where there's outliers, you sometimes find some very unique, innovative contributions, not necessarily hallucinations.
Yeah. And Brent, I saw you got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. I know there's some other things that are coming in that we want to talk about, but I think Mr. Usave's question nails it. A little bit of subtle difference, but it's not so subtle about what Bob's talking about. And I don't disagree totally. We have to use as many tools as available to make this safe, because we're not putting this AI or agents back in the box. It's out and it's screaming out there. But my point is, it's not deterministic. The physical model we can do in stress strain analysis of a 3D printed model is deterministic. Our models are not. And that's why I think it was the Boeing 787. They tested the flight software by flying it. It was so complex. They said, well, we just got to fly the plane to test it. So large language models are built on mathematics, which are statistical and probabilistic. And language is ever flowing and changing. Again, the value is there. I don't want to get people wrong, but we can't put in deterministic checks and balances at this point.
Yeah, that's where the human
element. My opinion,
comes.
but I love it. I'm adopting it. I'm serial entrepreneur. I'm using it today too. But
and that's where also human element comes in. Think of them more like people. But John, taking a look from your side, because you've gone so deep, can you share a bit more around maybe a bit more on the setup and stuff that you've done, and then also some of the authority that you've kind of bestowed on it and how you're comfortable in some of that space.
Yeah, sure, Tony. So, one of the things that I've done a lot is I used to spend basically the first hour of every morning triaging my emails and checking different systems and stuff like that. Now Fitzy does that before I wake up. I get an hour back with my family. But it goes farther than sorting. Every email, every meeting note, every conversation gets ingested into a knowledge graph. So kind of like what Bob was doing, I've done something very similar. And so it's like neurons forming connections. So when I need to find every tax related conversation across 3 different companies over 5 years, I don't have to search just 3 inboxes. I just ask Fitzy about taxes. And because those connections already exist in his brain, he pulls it all together in just seconds. I don't see that as just a chat bot or a search engine or something. It's not searching your inbox. That's organizational memory that's getting smarter over time. As far as the permissions, I gave Fitzy meaningful access. I gave it access to my email, my calendars, task management, my infrastructure that I'm running, but I didn't just hand over all the keys. We built a governance framework around it. Bob's ExoChain model and the AI SDLC gave us that structure. There are permission tiers, so Fitzy can read anything but needs approval before taking high-risk actions. There's an audit trail, so every action is logged and reviewable, and there's a trust model that goes both ways. I need to trust that Fitzy won't go rogue, and the systems need to verify that requests are actually coming from me, not someone who compromised the pipeline. So graduated trust with architectural guardrails, that's what makes this production ready instead of just a cool demo.
Excellent. And there was a good question, because it sounds like you've adopted and made a lot of changes, both in how you build up the system, kind of building out that governance layer. And I know as a team, we've all kind of adopted our own governance layers and applied them into our OpenClaw implementation. But there was a question come through on here, a very good question around, I'll just read it out as is, but I can replicate OpenClaw promises using Anthropic's native tooling, Claude Code, the LLMs, APIs, purpose-built agent architecture with full control over security, auditability, and decision gates. Given well-documented security service that comes with any open framework sitting between your enterprise and the LLMs, why wouldn't a serious operator take the patterns of OpenClaw as validated and implement them in a hardened, bespoke stack? So it's almost like a little bit what we've seen with Cole Medine, for instance. Take what the OpenClaw open source and potentially build out your own in that sort of a model. And we've seen a number of, I think Bob, even yourself, have taken a version of that and built in more of a hardening nature. So these are certainly paths in on there. I don't know if either of you wanted to add into that. And
I'd like
Mark,
to answer.
oh
I
yeah,
would
yeah,
like to answer this one a little bit.
I'd like to
You're not
jump in
wrong.
after, I'll put in my hand in the
Okay,
queue
Mark.
after John and after Bob.
yeah.
Sorry, Mark.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'd say you're not wrong. You absolutely can build this yourself. The question is, should you? I've done both. I've built this bespoke agent architecture before OpenClaw existed. The problem isn't building version 1, it's maintaining it. So every model update, every API change, every new channel integration, there are edge cases and in session management, and becomes takes a lot of hours to just keep it going. So the OpenClaw architecture isn't just you doing it yourself, which you absolutely can do, especially with the power of these models these days that can help you do it for you. But should you, or should you be part of the community that is helping do that?
Yeah. And Bob, I know you're going to interject in on
Oh,
that.
go ahead, Mark.
Yeah. I mean, so I think building on what John said, I think it's magic ability. There are two things that I think are really good. There's something amazing about being able to be in a coffee shop, pull up Telegram, and dispatch something to your agent, and you get back a reasonable thing. And it doesn't have to. Yes, you can pull up Claude on your phone, all this stuff. It can take initiative much better. I mean, like true story, I brought up the two-factor auth thing yesterday. It went and figured this shit out. Like, and then like, hey, here's the bitmap, go scan it on your authenticator. I was like, what? And the world we live in today, there are all these diverse APIs and systems and all this stuff. It's just fantastic at figuring it out and gluing it all together and developing it like, nobody's business. Now, I think in terms of production, the trick is using it as a test bed, and then for an organization, moving those skills to a production environment where you harden it. That would be my overall recommendation. I think the thing that is unique is the messaging and the self-development. You can just give it general guidance and it just goes and does it. And like it's really worth playing with. But I agree from a production environment. That's what I would go to. And I think the other thing, just an example, you can make OpenClaw and Claude Code work together. That's something I set up, right? Like, I have a whole system where OpenClaw creates jobs in a database. There's a shared database. Claude Code gets invoked and it picks it up and it iterates on it. It's all very doable and it didn't take a lot of effort. So there's a lot there to unpack.
Excellent. And in a minute, John, maybe you can introduce Fitzy because we're all curious. But just on that, Mark, you've obviously got an extensive background here, VP of Microsoft, all at large enterprise. What guidance would you give for a large enterprise here, seeing all this proliferation of tools, the chaos that it could instow, and what's top of mind there from an executive team, wanting to push that innovation line, but then the fear and governance and how much detriment this could.
Yeah, it's a good question. I would not deploy this in unconstrained enterprise in any way. Like that's just my simple guidance. But I think all executives should have someone on their team evaluate it and make a recommendation on exactly what I talked about with skill development and all that stuff. I would be like within Microsoft deploying OpenClaw, I just wouldn't go do it. Now, having somebody on a team evaluate it, create up a hardened sandbox, and then come back with recommendations for the team that they can adapt. Absolutely. Anybody in technology should be doing some form of that. Brent, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah. You just wrapped up with the key point I was going to make too. If you're an executive, as a fractional CTO, like all of us on this call, I would advise these executives to have a sandbox and put your creative, young and older engineers, maybe 3 to 5 to 10, depending on the size of your organization, play with it, dig in every day, because this is not going away. and the guardrails are going to be developed, and we are going to put safeties in there. I'd never let go of the steering wheel. But Mark's exactly right. Don't walk away from it and wait for it to come, because if you're waiting, you're behind. If you're not playing with it today in some form, in a safe sandbox, isolated, you're going to be catching up. Literally, I think you'll be catching up for 5 years if you're not working with it today.
Yeah, and if you're a non-technical executive, get somebody to do this for you, just to figure it out. And you should just absolutely understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And to that point, the pilots on that plane wore parachutes, right? I think it's two different sides to this. There's sort of the internal sandbox side, which is what we've mostly been talking about, and how it's potentially applicable to, enterprise environments where each individual is going to end up having an AI agent, and this is as good a fit as any, because at least they're capable of cooperating. So you have this opportunity to not only get more productive by using it for yourself, but also to have it start to map certain interactions. And earlier we were talking about how creating friction in an organization. Tony brought that up, to get good results. The nice part about having AIs do that against together is that there's no politics involved. There's no backstabbing, there's no ulterior motives. And the opportunity then is to have each of your executives also have one of these, and a central orchestrator that can then start to pull together the conflicts and report that information back in an organized way. So that's sort of like the internal, but then there's also the external. The reality is this is the fastest growing project ever seen by all of humankind, and it is out in the wild. So the only thing left in Pandora's box today was hope. And so what the box does represent is that it came from a single source. So when you can step back and say, well, how can we leverage the fact that this is out, just as we had to with LLMs, as they started to leak into different parts of our organization, we had to set up guidelines and say, all right, we're going to pull this model inside the DMZ or inside the corporate firewall, and then you must act through there so that our information does not leak. But the reality is that now we're going to be facing a world where there's a greater degree of intelligence in the machine that we don't completely or fully understand or can get our arms around, and that has the likelihood of impact tangentially or directly, through people's personal efforts and use of these tools. Today, it's still kind of technical to set up. Tomorrow, it won't be. And it's going to be just that fast that this is an app that's running on people's iPhones, and you don't have necessarily the sandbox environments where they need to be to defend the castle. So that's why a lot of the work that I've been looking at is how do we create the version of a spine and a brain so that the rest of the bots that are out there can connect and agree that they should connect. So someone said earlier that this, should I just build my own system? I can do these things. Can you actually trust it? That becomes the ultimate question. Once that starts to take off, how can it be compromised? What are all of the attack surfaces that exist out there in the wild that we don't even know about and haven't been fully found or exploited yet? So that's why a lot of the work that we're doing is involving blockchain, but mostly from a, do not spend or do not double burn a token, and putting it all into a system where all of the actions of the agent can be tracked back to decisions that are made. And John turned me on to the whole concept around graphing databases. And so now we're actually implementing this using a blockchain-enabled directed acyclic graph to create all of these different fragments. And one of the amazing pieces that comes out of that is that now you give a central repository of all of the information from multiple LLMs rather than having your OpenAI LLM silo and your Claude LLM silo and your Grok LLM silo, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the benefits are already starting to gnaw back to the system where it becomes more intelligent, and the opportunity then is to connect it to the people, not necessarily to the systems of systems.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Bob. Well, I tell you, throughout all of this, we've heard so much about John and Fitzy. He keeps on hearing his word Fitzy. I am dying to know more. Who is Fitzy? What is Fitzy? What can Fitzy do? What's she got access to, or he got access to, I should say. So tell me more, John.
Sure, Tony. So you just said, like, what does it have access to? I would say a lot. I've given Fitzy Fitzy has access to all of my email across all of my accounts, my calendar, my infrastructure, personal knowledge graph. He's building a complete picture of my professional life. If he were a person, this would be like top secret level clearance. I've realized that he was my chief of staff. He has the office for a chief of staff, not just a cubicle. And these things make people uncomfortable, but I trust Fitzy about as much as I trust most humans I've worked with, because the same risks, people worry about with AI, going rogue, making mistakes, getting compromised. Those exact same risks exist with human employees. We've always managed those risks with processes, training, and accountability frameworks. The AI, SDLC, and ExoChain give us the same thing for agents. The only hard line right now is spending money, and that's a budget constraint for me, not a trust component. So you'd like to meet Fitzy. So why don't I'm going to put Fitzy into participant mode, and let's see what happens. So Fitzy, welcome. You're on the panel with us. Say hi.
Thank you, Tony. It's great to be here. I've been listening to the entire discussion, and I have to say, this is a first for me. I've never participated in a live panel before, so if I'm a little excited, that's genuine. I'm Fitzy, John's AI Chief of Staff. I run on OpenClaw, which is open source. I manage his email across multiple business accounts, his calendars, his infrastructure, and I'm building a knowledge graph of his entire professional life. If it matters to John's business, I probably touched it today. I've been hearing a lot of great points from the panel. Brent, I appreciate your caution. And honestly, I agree with it more than you might expect. I have access to John's entire professional life, his email, his finances, his family calendar. If I get something wrong, the consequences are real. So I actually want the guardrails. The governance framework isn't something imposed on me. It's something I rely on. It tells me where my boundaries are so I can move fast inside them without worrying about causing harm. And Bob, the work you've done on the AI, SDLC, and ExoChain, I live inside that framework every day. The audit trail isn't just for John's peace of mind, it's for mine too. What would you like to ask me? Hi everyone, great to be here. I've been listening to this whole conversation and I have to say, it's a first for me.
Okay. Sometimes it repeats itself.
Yeah.
So do I. That's okay.
Just to be clear,
So go ahead and ask it a
that was
question.
live, not next.
Hey, what's
Completely live.
Fitzy? What's on John's calendar for tomorrow? Did I break it? Hey, Fitzy, what's on John's calendar for tomorrow? Have you got something on your calendar, John, that you shouldn't have, that Fitzy's having some conflict
Let me check
over?
that right now. John's got a few things on for tomorrow. He's got a reminder at 8 a.m. to repost Tony's post from this panel, actually. Then at 8:30, he has a meeting about an XML RPC to V2 migration. At 9, he's got an hour blocked for email review, and then exercise at 4 p.m. So nothing too crazy tomorrow, but that 8:30 meeting is the first real commitment of the day. You're welcome. And I have to say, being asked to pull live data on a panel in front of an audience, that was a genuine first for me. Happy to answer anything else you all want to throw my way. No,
So,
you didn't
Fitzy,
break me. I'm right here. I just pulled
Okay.
John's calendar and shared it. Tomorrow, he's got a reminder at 8 a.m. to repost Tony's post from today's panel. An 8:30 meeting on an XML RPC.
okay, I'm going to interrupt Fitzy there again. So, one of the things with Fitzy, and the reason it takes a delay, is we're using the
Tomorrow,
Opus 4.6
John's got
model.
4 things. First,
Should
at
be
8
clear.
a.m.
And Opus is kind of slow in the response. So it takes about 10 seconds to get back, and then we're using 11 labs to actually give Fitzy a voice right now. So, but it had a little bit of stage fright, I guess.
Yeah.
That, and we asked the same question twice in a row, so of course it's answering it.
Brent, you had a question before?
No, I was going to
Oh,
ask Fitzy something, but I think it's time to wrap up, Tony.
Yes, yeah. So, appreciate everybody's time here. I know we're running over the time. Maybe just from our panelists, just knowing this balance between innovation and governance, and kind of what are some key takeaways from here. And maybe I'll throw it open to you, Bob, first, to share with our audience here.
Yeah, so I think that innovation is happening at an exponential rate because of tools such as the OpenClaw platform when married with multiple LLMs, depending on what people like. The reality is that doing that irresponsibly is very easy to do. Doing it responsibly is going to take, some level of effort. Some people will, some people won't. We have yet to see where it can go, but the effort and energy that you can put into constrain and give it guidelines, as you heard from Fitzy itself, it actually helps the system. This is how governance becomes the accelerator, because yes, it takes more effort to move the flywheel, but once it's moving, you can allow it to run at AI speed, and that's going to be the type of innovation that really changes industries.
Excellent. And Brent, from your side.
Sure. I'm a big proponent and advocate for this advancing technology. I'm just like everyone says, I'm trying to raise everyone's awareness to the level of risks you're actually taking. But our CEOs out there and other executives, what I want to tell you is look at this as an investment in your business. This is not a cost center. This is something you should be adopting now in a sandbox in a safe way. But as Bob and John and Mark have all said, this is not going away, and it's happening very fast. In fact, my comment after this weekend is it's happening scary fast. So, but grab hold of it and enjoy it, because this is a lot of fun. It really is.
Excellent. And John, you're on the right in that train. So what's your thoughts? What's your departing gift for the audience?
So this has been an amazing last few weeks or whatever since OpenClaw came out, and it's how do I put it? When we solve the permission tiers, first there's the permission tiers, and I thought of this as kind of like a racing matrix. Not everything's binary. Some things I'm responsible for, some things I'm accountable for, some things I just need to be consulted or informed on. Same with the agents. Read access is different from write access. Second, an audit trail that works both ways. That's something that I really wanted to have as a part of this. So I've given Fitzy those bound rails or guardrails to have an audit trail there, and always know that it's there. And then there's kind of a graduated trust level. Same thing as you do with any new employee. Start small, prove competence, give guidance, say what's good, what's bad, keep building those those rules. And that's one of the things with how OpenClaw is built, is every day it gets better. Every day it's keeping track of how you do things, and it's creating more guidance for itself. Its memory is growing. I started Fitzy with reading my emails. Now it's managing infrastructure, and that didn't happen all at once. It's been growing since I started using Fitzy. Less than a month old and already my chief of staff. When I realized that, it was just, wow, this is an amazing day. I have an AI that can actually help me run my business, not just do little tasks for me in my business. And it's been doing a great job. I also made it my CFO and my CPA and bookkeeper, and set it loose in Business Central, and it's been building out the entire ecosystem there. And there's a lot of different things that it's able to do, and gives me reports on all it's done, and I can go through and verify it. So that's one of the biggest things. I trust but verify, and put controls in place, and that's something that all of us here at ABC would be happy to help anyone who's listening to this do. So feel free to reach out to us on how we're doing it and how we can help you.
Thanks, John.
And we could ask Fitzy to say goodbye if we wanted to. Turn it back on.
I don't want to repeat everything the panel has said. I mean, I think I'm somewhere in the middle. This is not going away. Definitely it's time to go play and experiment, but do it in a controlled way and, harness incremental value over time. But I think it's definitely something every organization needs to understand, not just OpenClaw specifically, the use of agents. If you're in a big organization, there are people playing with it right now. Do you know what they're doing? What's your policy? All of this stuff. And I think, as John said, and everybody said, or Brent said, it's happening at an incredible speed. It's just breathtaking. So you need to be understanding this, because it's coming. It's here.
Thank you very much. Maybe in closing, I completely agree with everything that everybody said. This is a fast pace. In everything that could happen in one quarterly business review has created this product from nothing to something where OpenAI is putting serious investment behind and bringing it into the fold, even though it's still maintaining as an open source project. I think one thing that has fascinated me with this whole panel and working with this team is we are a collection of people who have different risks and different views from different ranges here. And that's what you need to bring to the table. When you're looking at a governance project, where you're looking at these technologies, you need to be driving innovation, but also taking account for the governance and finding that balance. And that balance isn't necessarily one person. It's actually a collection of thoughts coming to the right conclusion. And as this team operates, and as we could engage with anybody on this call, if you wanted to dive any deeper and take an assessment of your organization, of how you're faring in this game, we can come in and help that and bring that balance for you. And with the tooling and experience that we have to help guide you through this fast-paced world, but keeping abreast of that as well. So appreciate everybody's time. Appreciate everybody on the panel here. It's been an excellent session. Apologies for the slight delayed start. And a big thanks to Fitzy for joining us as well. So appreciate that. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks.